And here we go. We've got it going on. Welcome to Sales Chatter Live. We have an amazing guest today. Dan, you got to unmute yourself, my brother. But, it's one of those things where it is
Yes, I
Tuesday.
got it.
And like I said, we have, Dan, let's go into what we got today, brother.
Here we go, everybody. Yesterday, we talked about one of the key one of the chapters, not even chapter, I guess, just a preliminary piece of a chapter, the power of three in yesterday's show. And today we've actually brought the author in with us, Glenn. And, we were kind of sitting backstage doing an audible here because we were like, where is Glenn? He's not coming. Okay, what are we going to do? And I highlighted 4 pieces of the book that I actually wanted to talk to Glenn about. And I'm so glad he's here because we would have had to discuss it, but I still would have had the same questions afterwards. So, Glenn Poulos, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, thanks. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, buddy, we are excited. I have to say, I read a lot of sales books. I love your book. For all of you that are watching and listening that don't have a copy, I got one autographed by the author right here. See? So, yeah, there we go. Just for anyone watching and listening, grab this book. Especially if you're Canadian, because there's a lot of Canadian references in the book.
Yeah,
I love it. I actually started giggling about when you talked about Winnipeg, and because I don't know whoever wants to go to the peg, but anyway, you brought up some valid points. But just the strategies in this, the 57 winning sales factors to grow a business and build a career in selling. And Ryan and I talk to you every single day, every day of the week about a career. This is a career, logistics sales. If it's just a job for you, you're never going to educate yourself, never going to learn, you're never going to grow and really reach the heights that you're capable of, right? Exactly. Ryan and I say all the time, you've got 10 rungs ahead of you that you can climb, a minimum. And when you are involved in a career, that's when you really start diving deep and not only just reading a book like this, but studying it, listening to the things Glenn has to say, and really taking them and, chewing them over and making them your own and utilizing these strategies and tactics to really win. Glenn, what was the initial kind of idea for this book? Why did you put it together for salespeople?
So I started collecting I started in sales in 1985, and I left a government job. I was a civil servant, as we call them in Canada. And my boss said, you got to get out of here. You're not in the right field. And my coworkers were saying, you work too fast. You're making us look bad, right? And you don't get paid piecework at the government. Let's put it that way, And so I quit, went into sales, and I started noticing these rules of the guys around me that were mentoring me and teaching me how to sell, and and mistakes they were making, things they were doing that made sense. And I started writing them down, and I usually add their name and then I'd give it a kind of a funny name and attribute it to them. And I did that for years, and I started sharing those little snippets with people, and some sales guys that said, hey, can you come to my sales meeting and share some of these? And then people are like, oh, you should write a book. And of course, I never wrote a book until the 2020 when the pandemic hit, and I had nothing else to do in Canada because I was locked down. Couldn't go out at night, couldn't go out on the weekends. So I thought, hey, might as well write the book that I've been promising myself for 35 years. And so I used the time at home I actually was working during the pandemic at the office because I had to keep our warehouse open. We were an essential service, but evenings and weekends, of course, I was home, and that's when I wrote the book. And I just wanted to see if I could do it, as a bucket list thing, check it off. I thought, what better time? This is probably not going to happen again. Hopefully it doesn't. And so that's how I wrote it. And so I'd been collecting them all, and I moved them all into a writing program, and I just started, working on the background of each one. And as I like to say, 75,000 words later, I had a book, and I sent it to the editor. And when she removed the F word, from the book, she sent it back, and I said, okay, let's agree on 71,000 words, right? And that's how many words were in the book.
I like that because it's especially in sales, right? It's not an industry for the faint of heart. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know, Ryan, did you pull out specific pieces? Because I've got 4 specific, and I mean, literally, we're talking not even a quarter of the way through the book. I said to myself, I'm going to read the book, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to pick the 4 first topics, because I'd actually like to, Glenn, we'd like to have you back on to discuss.
Love to come.
Topics.
Yeah, anytime.
And so I kind of picked 4, and I didn't know, Ryan, if you had any specific ones you wanted to address first. You wanted me to jump in?
I'll go with one, and I'll let you rip it, because like you said, you couldn't stop talking about this amazing book, and it really got me engaged. So first and foremost, Glenn, thank you so much for being on the show and writing this amazing book during the pandemic. One thing that really resonated with me, and I started actually writing down my own strategies today, how I can be with this, was when you talk about the etiquette of getting to the point. When you mentioned that you're getting like calls, people are like, how are you? How's the day? Like if I'm calling somebody in Toronto, hey, how about them Blue Jays? So for me, it's one of those things when I'm reading here is, when you waste those 4 to 5 seconds, that's when you kind of like, you can only make a first impression once, right? So in terms of that, can you talk a little bit to the audience about what your framework or your mindset is with that, with being direct, and what kind of like ROI results did you see, like, when you either train sales reps or even yourself, when you get to the point when you get to the point right away, rather than trying to build that rapport? Because everyone's talking relationship, but I feel like how are you, or kind of that like, hey, how's the weather going, or whatever it is not really building rapport.
Yeah.
Sales.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you were kind of straight man me there with one of your lines, because you said you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? I mean, you sort of said something like that, right? But later in the chapters in the book, there's a chapter called "You Only Get Forever to Make Another Impression," right? But I want to answer your question, and then we can go back to that and explain what I mean by that. But yeah, you only get forever to make it, and you highlighted it. Good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, like when I phone someone, first of all, when someone phones me and they say, "Oh, hi, Glenn, how are you doing?" and I'm already mad, right? Like, because usually I'm shitty, right? Like I'm running a large sales company. We have a lot of people. The markets are tough right now. I mean, so why would you ask me a question you don't know the answer to, right? Like that, like such as that. So I'm up, before they've even said that, I'm already upset with them and annoyed, right? But the other part is then, so I'll say, "Oh, I'm fine, thanks," and then of course etiquette that my mom taught me, right? I got to say, "And how are you doing?" Right? Or I try not to sometimes, but most of the time, just because I'm polite and Canadian, I'm like, "Oh, and how are you doing?" Right? And then
you're Canadian.
Yeah. And then they say, "Oh, I'm fine." And then they have to add, "Thank you so much for asking." And right. And I make, well, who programmed you to say that? Right. And there's certain companies now that, like my bank, right? They always phone and say, "Oh, how are you doing, Mr. Poulos?" And I say, "Oh, I'm really well, thank you." And then I don't say anything else, because I know they have to say the script, which is, "Thank you so much for asking." Right. And so now I've already wasted 30 seconds, right? Whereas if I'm doing the call, in the 30 seconds, I'm already done. And I'm saying, "Hey, it's Glenn from Acme. I hope you're doing well. We've been saving some guys in your area 20% on their packaging costs, using our new, whatever advanced blow, foam technology. And I'd really like to get 10 minutes on your calendar so I can show you how we're saving people money. What do you say?" Right? And just get it all out in one sentence. And I mean, that is actually how I do it, right? Other people maybe do it a different way, and they want to do the challenger model and figure out who all the stakeholders are before they get to the point. But most people hang up or otherwise don't take your calls, right? And I just get to the point, right? And I don't, to be honest, I mean, I don't want to. like, I don't really care how he's doing, right? Like, because I mean, he could have had a
Mhm.
fight with his wife. He could have won
Yep.
the lottery. I mean, what difference does it make, right?
Oh, if you won the lottery, you wouldn't be at work. But.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. I used to often say, his kid could have got caught selling drugs last night
Right.
or something. Like,
Exactly.
he's just in a bad mood.
Exactly. And so I try to, I'm hyper focused on figuring out how I'm impacting people on a moment by moment basis. And I can be like intense in terms of my, like, over the topness about a lot of things, right? I'll get off on a topic or whatever. And, like a couple years ago, like, I'm still involved in it, but I mean, I was talking a lot about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, like a lot of people were, right? But I didn't really talk to a lot of people about it, because you can sort of measure in the first couple of seconds, is this guy a crypto guy or not, right? If he's a crypto guy, then you can start like throwing around all the acronyms and having a good chat and whatever, and it's fun. But the second I realize I'm off kilter, then I move directions, right? And there's another chapter in the book called uh, uh, it's like familiarity breeds contempt. Oh, implied familiarity also breeds contempt, and that's where I try to get across the point of, like, don't like ask me about the Blue Jays, because maybe I hate baseball. Like, maybe I got rejected from the Blue Jays, or from whatever level of baseball when I was a kid, and I forever hated the sport, right? Or, and there's a great story about me talking to a guy about fishing, right? And I missed, and I put my foot in my mouth because I reminded him about his divorce and his ex-wife and his ex-father-in-law, and he was mad. And I changed the whole dynamic of the call by implying that I knew about the guy because I saw a photo with a fish in it, right? And so, yeah, so sorry, I'm kind of rambling a bit there, but
Okay.
trying to get to the point, it's really important, right? And I mean, yeah, you want to make a good impression, but you want to be making a good impression every time you speak to the guy, not just the first time, right? Yeah.
I've often heard when, early in my career, people said, when you go into the office, like, look around and, see pictures of the family and ask about that. And I quickly realized that like, especially if you're meeting the person for the first time,
Too familiar.
I find it disingenuous
It is.
to, ask, because I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to see you after today for any time ever again.
Yeah.
Do I, and not to sound like an asshole, but do I really care about your kids? And like, oh, is that the
Exactly.
graduation? How old are they now? And everything.
Right.
And I just find that is so the opposite way as a salesperson that you would want to go, because oh yeah, that was the anniversary or da 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 da, and you're talking, like, you don't know this person, you don't know their wife, you don't know their kids, you don't know what's going on in their life, you don't know what's happening. Get to business and get out. And then and again, my belief, when you do business together, you become friends, I guess. And I don't even know if friends is the word, but you become colleagues that work together, and that's where the relationship's built. It's not built on the first one because you walked in and you saw a boat. Oh, I love boats. Oh, really? What do do you do any boating? No, I just love boats. And it's like, okay, you're grabbing at straws here, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my point. And and so people are wondering, like, well, what do I do then? I see the photos and I want to ask, what should I do instead, right? So how do I build rapport, especially not related to the products or services that you're selling, right? So I have a great technique that I learned from a guy named Mike, and it's called Watch Your Weekend Problem, right? And it's a 3-part approach. Watch your weekend problem, right? It's a little kind of pun you sort of say to yourself to remember the spiel, so you do it in the correct way, right? So the first one is, of course, the guy needs to have a watch on, or it could be a woman or a man with a bracelet or whatever, and it could be something other than a watch, but it really works well with a watch. It's like, wow, that's a really nice watch, and guys are always like kind of vain about their watches, right? And so it's a natural. They're like, oh, he likes my watch, right? And he's not going to be offended by it. It's like, wow, that's a really nice watch. Oh yeah, and then then you kind of slide in quickly with what's the story behind the watch, right? Oh, I was in Switzerland and, with the wife. We're on a special trip. And she agreed to let me buy a Rolex, and I had to wait 2 years to get it. And oh my God, that's amazing. The other thing is then is so, and rather than looking at his photos and stuff, ask him, say, so when you're not at work on the weekend, what do you like to do? What do you do when you're not working? And then shut up and just see what they say. And some people say, like, I stay home and I watch Netflix, and, then you can crack a joke. Oh, what, Netflix and chill, or whatever. Or you can, basically maybe he says, I hunt, I fish, I, whatever. I do this, I golf, I play sports, I, go to the gym, I ride my bike, I play pickleball, whatever, right? Whatever it is. And, and then try to find something that's naturally rapport building, like, I don't actually enjoy a lot of sports, so I can't resonate on a lot of football, baseball, hockey stuff. But there are other things like, music and, some things like that I'm really geeky on and stuff like that. So if there's any kind of that stuff and recording, and I do a lot of that. And also I play pickleball and like racket sports. So, I'm looking for, and then I can be naturally rapport building with it, right? Yeah. Talk about the weekend. Then when you sort of get through that, whatever, then you say, so when you get back to work on Monday, what's the biggest problem you're solving right now? What's keeping you up at night?
I like that.
Those are the three things, right? And the best place to use Watch Your Weekend Problem is when you go to those damn networking events and you haven't got a clue what to say to the guy, right?
Yes.
And you got to go to this guy, then this guy, then this guy, and your boss is paying you to be at this networking event, and you're kind of standing there going, God, I feel stupid. Like, what do I say? And, now, if someone's asking you, if you're the center of attention, the people are kind of asking you what your Watch Your Weekend Problem is. But if you're the guy responsible for doing the networking and talking to these executives or leaders of something or other, it's a great icebreaker, and it really works well.
I love that. I just want to add on to that. I think that is so cool. I'm going to be using that because I'm going to a networking event the middle of this month in Toronto, and like that, I'm taking this. So I'm taking this. But the one thing too that I found that works too as well, because somebody did it to me last night when I was walking in the mall with my wife, was I'm covered in tattoos. So when somebody comes up to me and be like, oh my God, nice tattoos, and what's your story behind it, and things like that. So it does. So for everybody who's watching out there, doesn't need to be a watch. It could be like hat, if you do shoes, and I feel like it's like what Dan always kind of says is like, when you buy a car, you start seeing the car a lot on the highway. Like, so my wife got like she got a designer bag, and now she's noticing, oh, everybody else with their designer bag. So it's like have that point of conversation. But I love that. So Watch a Weekend Problem. That is especially that problem part, like transitioning from weekend to problem. Kudos to that. That's really cool.
I actually love that transition. So what's the biggest problem you're solving today? Right, because it's and especially in our industry, every hour there's a different problem. And like, what's the biggest problem you're solving right now, like in this moment, as opposed to saying, what's the biggest problem in your department, where it makes them feel like, wait, you're trying to say I'm not doing my job? I got problems in my department, right? I like that. That's a really good one.
Carry on.
No, carry on, Glenn.
I was just going to say, like, I get hit up all the time from things related to HR, like human resources. So a lot of times it's like an HRIS, a human resources information system, which is the be all and the end all for tracking everything HR related, payroll, benefits, it's a giant database, and there's a lot of competition in that space. And a lot of people hit you up on LinkedIn if you're high up in the company and figuring, figuring they can sell you their HRIS system, right? But so often, like 100% of the time, they're trying to get your attention, like to get in front of you to show you their HRIS system, rather than finding out if you have any HR problems, right? Like none of them are asking, what's the biggest HR problem you're dealing with right now as a business owner, right? Like that's something I might be inclined to answer, but most of the time what they're asking me are these weird backwards methods of saying, I want an appointment to get to click my Calendly so we can give you a 15-minute, and they're patterning me into this whole SDR, BDR, cycle, whatever, where it's like a pattern, and it just feels impersonal to me, right? And and I think they should start by asking me, telling me I have a nice watch, finding out what I'm doing on the weekend, and then asking me what my biggest problem is. So Yeah.
Now, how would you say one would do that if you're not face to face?
So
So if someone's prospecting via email, phone calls, DMs, whatever, how would you go about kind of implementing that scenario or that philosophy?
yeah. So yeah. And first of all, like for as far as I'm, I always have the philosophy, right? Being in front of the customer, selling the product, that's selling. Everything else is marketing, right? Lead
Mhm.
generation,
Mm.
and so
And I agree with
I'm not
that
trying to
completely.
shirk the question, but I mean, I'm
Mhm.
basically trying to say like a lot of what I'm trying to teach people is how to get, act, and stay in front of the customer and be a pleasure to do business with always, right? So
Mhm.
really, my specialty is getting in front of the customer, and that's where magic happens. But the you know so I would probably use like in Teams and things like that. Now I have like the loop and things like that where you can put instant little surveys and things like these are the top 4 HR problems. Which one's affecting you most, Glenn? Right? And I'm doing a quick survey. Right? I might be inclined to like say, well, turnover, whatever. Right? And then I would probably try to eke my way into some sort of a like rapport and say, oh, okay, well, can I, I'm going to send you a report we have on turnover statistics in
Mm.
Canada, United States, North America, whatever, right? And then provide a little bit of value, right? You know, and then just, but basically, my attitude, to be honest, is right, wrong, or indifferent, is that if you have a product that a company could buy, then really what you need to do is get in front of the right people at that company and sell it to them, right? The I don't. I mean, I guess some of the programs now, SAS, whatever, it's a lot of it's done virtually, so they're really trying to pattern you through their system, right? The SDR, the BDR guys call you, then it moves up the food chain. They do a demo online and what have you, but I mean, I'm more about we're selling products and they have to be sold face to face in order for the customer to buy them. So I'm more the type where this is the guy who's the head of manufacturing. We're selling a manufacturing solution, and I'm basically saying, Bob, I'm in your area on Thursday. I'd like 5 minutes on your time. I'd like to, I'd like to meet you. I'd like to go over it, whatever, and and get them, even if it's in the lobby, right? And then there's the whole "don't never sit in the lobby," the title of the
Mm.
book, right?
I
And
actually
then
enjoyed that.
yeah,
When obviously, cover, first impression, I'm like, never sit in the lobby. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, Glenn agrees with me that if I have a meeting and it's for 10:30, don't waste my time by coming out at 10:45. Like, be
right,
there at 10:30. And I
yeah,
start reading it. I'm like, oh, that's what Glenn means. Don't sit, keep your eye on the stairs where the
yeah,
individual would come down. Don't play on your phone. Like, you're
yeah,
there for a purpose. So I
exactly,
really enjoyed that part because
yeah,
you debunked what
yeah,
just most people by looking at it saying never sit in the lobby, and then you have a salesperson that's kind of staring out the window. Um, for me, that kind of gives me that, you know, my time's just as valuable as
yeah,
yours, even though I'm trying to solicit
yeah,
your business.
yeah,
Kind of like going to the doctors and sitting there for 35 minutes waiting for your appointment. It's like, I understand you're my doctor, but my time is just as valuable, and
right,
you have to appreciate that. And I
yeah.
think as a professional, we have to appreciate people's
Right.
time.
Yeah, and so not trying to deflect off the question. The question was like if I'm trying to like cold email someone or like on LinkedIn or something about my system or whatever, and I don't have any rapport, you know, that again, that's really not my specialty. I'm not trying to like not answer the question, but I'm
Yeah,
more about how do I get in front of the customer, right? And I mean, I basically phone them up and I'll just say, hey, like I said, hope you're doing well. We've just saved 20% at 3 of your top competitors. I'd like to get in there and see you and show you some of the reasons how we're doing it, right? Oh, I'm really busy. Well, can you have 5 minutes in the lobby? I'm going to be in your area next week.
yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I'm really busy. Okay. Well, I'll see you in the lobby next. I'll call you from the lobby on next Thursday, right?
Yeah.
And then of course you go to the lobby. He forgot that he told you he was too busy, right? But he remembers you were coming, or oh yeah, right. The guy said the lobby or whatever. He comes down. Of course, Canada, we have donuts, right? Give the donuts to and bribe them with donuts, but never after
Can't get
10:30.
with donuts.
Never after 10:30, right? So that's the rule of Canada. Don't ever bring donuts after 10:30 because then you wreck the guy's lunch and he's pissed off at you again, right? And so show up early, bring the donuts, and then of course you always got something in your hand, something in your mind, right? When you show up, right? You're not just standing there in the lobby looking stupid, and you're not sitting in the lobby because you never sit in the lobby, right? And then once you've spoken to them or whatever, and you've gotten a few minutes, then you always golden rule, always ask for a mini tour, right? And everyone's like, what the hell's a mini tour, right? That's a tour that's mini. It's like not a long tour. A tour takes all fucking day, pardon my language, sorry. And a mini tour is just, hey, I know you're building that new manufacturing wing or whatever. Can I get a quick tour? I know you're building this new office wing or you're putting in a new system here. Or you're putting in something new in the warehouse or the parking or the whatever. Like, I mean, depending on what you sell, right? But somewhere in that building, they're buying and putting your stuff, right? And so you've got to get there. And so ask for a little mini tour of the location and see how you're set up, see the structure, blah, blah, blah. Just mini tour will only take a few minutes. And then, if he starts like humming and hawing, like, oh, and I said, look, I promise I won't sell any encyclopedias while I'm here. And then he usually laughs, right? Then he gets you through the magic door, right? Yeah. And of course, if you've been there before, which in a lot of cases you have a territory, you beat these customers more than once, right? When you're not sitting in the lobby and you're a few minutes early, you're actually in your car sitting, waiting to walk in 1 minute before your meeting, not sit down, right? And you're practicing the other golden rule, which is never forget a face. And so you're going through your phone and you're remembering everyone that you've ever met in that building, right? Because they're in your contact list. You go to the CRM or whatever. Sally, right? That's the tall redheaded lady. Bob, that's the bald guy. Jack, that's the short guy. Whatever. And take their face and move it from long-term memory to the front of your front memory. Instant recall, right? So you're on the mini tour. The guy's walking you back to the new section, whatever it is, the new production area that you asked them for the mini tour, right? And guess who walks by? Sally. It's like, hey, Sally, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. It's great to see you. And of course, you're just moving. You're not stopping the flow, right? She's like, who the hell is that? Oh, Glenn, right, from 2 years ago. When we bought the widgets. That guy's great. He's always a pleasure to do business with, right? And then Bob walks by. Bob, Jack, Sam, Bill, Steve, and everybody, right? And they all hear their name and they're all happy. And because the worst thing is when all those people walk by and you can't remember their name. You can remember it, but not fast enough because you've only got a microsecond when they're walking by you, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why you got to remember it.
Yeah, we built a logistics CRM called Bridger, and one of the big things I wanted was people's pictures. So literally, we built it as if it was a real estate agent card, okay. And I love that fact because I'll get on a demo with 6 people. And I'll have 2 of them in my CRM. And as soon as I see their face, I don't even have to read the name at the bottom because I've programmed their face in my mind by looking at their tiles so often. So I love the fact that you said that because you can just take a system like Bridger and just pull up your contacts and type in the company name, and you see all the pictures from all your contacts in the company. So their picture is right in front of you.
Yes.
Exactly. I love that you brought.
And you want to do that before you walked into the lobby, so you don't have to remember it once you're there, right?
Yes, and, exactly.
And so again, and I mean, selling logistics software, I mean, that's something that I'm sure there's a lot of online aspects of it, but
yes,
but also there's the whole thing about calling, starting with the CEO, right? And it's I mean, basically, hey, Jack, I mean, we've been saving a lot of companies just like yours a fair amount, a lot of money with our new system. I'd like to get 5 minutes on your schedule to go over why I think you guys need to look at this.
Yep.
And Jack, the CEO, says, I don't deal with that, right? The vice president of transportation or the the CTO, the chief transportation officer, handles that. Well, who's that? Oh, well, that's Sally, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Can you transfer me?
Yeah. Or even send an email and connect me so they know I'm calling and they
right. And now you've gone from the CEO to the CTO or whatever, the chief, logistics officer or whatever, and who tells you, look, I'm sorry, my IT guy and my VP of logistics handles that. Oh, okay. So now you've gone from the CEO to the CEO to the VP of logistics, the IT guy. And before you know it, of course, then the warehouse manager is the one that gets the demo, right? Because it's the one that, right? But but all through the thing, you're talking to the warehouse manager. You're like, yeah, when I was visiting Jack about this thing, I mean, he was blown away. And then when you get to a point where you've shown them the WSP, right, the winning sales presence, and where you're showing them the killer feature, and they're just drooling over it, that's when you call Jack, and you say, Jack, the CEO, right? You say, Jack, I'm in the warehouse. We're showing the system. I know you're super busy. Can you just take 2 minutes, walk down to the warehouse? You need to see this thing. Your people are salivating all over the software, and if you can get them to come or whatever, and these guys and the whole food chain sees you bring these things together, but that's all done face to face, right? Try doing that on Zoom, right? It's impossible. And
could definitely be challenging. I mean, the majority of my sales is on Zoom now, mainly because of the vastness of where we're calling
right.
all over North America, right?
Right.
And getting demos all over North America. I mean, you'd spend a small fortune traveling to all of that. But I'm also a big believer, and I mean, I've got. I mean, I know we're running out of time here, but and I've got so many things that I want to ask you, which is why we definitely want to bring you back. Because I immediately when I finished the book, the first thing I said to Ryan is, we are never going to cover the value we want to cover in 30 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So to close off today's show, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about greed-based learning factor.
Okay.
And to me, I started reading it and I was like, yeah, I love this. So just share with the audience what kind of the origin of it, what it means, and then we'll close off today's show, and then we'll pick it up again with all the other questions that I have later.
Sounds good. And sorry if I rambled on and kind of.
You did not, my friend. It was all valuable. It was awesome.
Right. So greed-based learning, it's the concept. When I first in sales, we had 40 companies we represented. They had 5 or 10 products each. That was like 200 to 400 products, whatever it was. I mean, and I was a kid, and I was like, how in the hell? I couldn't remember any of it. Right? I couldn't remember this from that or whatever, right? And then ultimately I realized something was that it was in my human nature in myself and so the concept I always share is buying a car, right? I'm not a car guy. I like cars. I mean, I like driving a nice car, but I don't really care about the car. I don't care what's under the hood or the tires or anything.
Yep.
Except for every 4 years when I get a new car, right? And then I become an armchair expert on the 2 or 3 brands I'm looking at that moment in time. And I'm able to earn it effortlessly because there's a greedy win for me, right? I'm getting a brand new car, right? So whether it's Ford, GM, or Chrysler, or Beamer and Mercedes Benz, it doesn't matter whatever level you're in. You're looking at 2 or 3 in the one range, right? And you know everything, right? You got to go home and tell the wife why you need the Mercedes or why you need this, that, or the other thing, right? And you're just rhyming off the facts, rhyming them. It's like, how do you learn that? It's because it becomes effortless because you've got something to, to get out of it in a way. And it sounds a little bad, but I mean, it's not. It's just a natural inclination. The other way you understand is like I never watch really the U.S. football games, but if I have $5, someday someone convinces me to put $5 on a game, I'm glued to the TV set. Like,
yes,
why? Right?
Because you want to protect your bet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was I looked for opportunities, and then I would go and learn. And I would say, hey, this guy's looking for this thing. Now all I need to do is remember 3 or 4 things, and I can get this amount of $20,000 instrument or sale or whatever, this amount of commission, and it just became an effortless where I was able to tie opportunity to learning. If you're just trying to learn things randomly, then you're not going to be able to retain it. It's like trying to run your day with ChatGPT, right? Like ChatGPT can give you an idea where to get started, but you have to have something truly a way of applying it for it to really show its value, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of how I apply it, and I promptly forget everything after I don't need it anymore, right? I don't feel the need to retain any of the information.
Yeah. So. When I finished reading this part of the chapter of The Power of 3, you run what 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 pages on greed-based learning factor. It immediately brought me back to when I bought my Ford Fusion electric.
Right.
And so it was a hybrid electric. and I went from a Charger GT to that, and yeah, it was a Charger, not a Challenger, and RT, sorry, not GT, and when I started to do my research, it was about 3 months later I got the car. And when I walked in, I mean, I knew everything about the Sync 3 system. I knew everything I could about the car. I went to the car show and saw the car. I did all of these things. And I remember standing there with my sales agent. And I was like, and he's like, and I opened the door, and like within 10 seconds, I got my phone synced and everything. And he looked at me and he says, Dan, you know what? He goes, and we're really good friends, the agent and I. He goes, like, you know more about this car than I do. He goes, like, you're selling me on the car and you're just so excited about it. And it was the first, like, when I read this half of the chapter, I actually sat there, Glenn, and I went, wow. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first read, greed-based learning, and, when you're starting to talk about the GBL, I was like, well, is it really greed? Is it, and you start obviously questioning the words, right? Instead of understanding the meaning behind it. And it was like, yeah, I'm getting a new car. I wanted to know as much as I can. It was kind of the start of the electric car revolution. And I was, I wanted to kind of be at the top of it. And for months after that, I had all sorts of friends and colleagues coming up to me. I'm thinking about buying an electric car. What do you think about this, this, and this? And I became like the expert around me of these electric vehicles. And I was like, and I'm like, why are you coming to me? They're like, oh man, well, like what you were saying before you bought your car. And I'm thinking, wow, I did. I mean, I had spreadsheets on like kilometers, liters per 100 kilometers, and like everything. I mapped the thing out to a T, because I was moving into like, and I didn't do it for my truck when I switched to my truck, because I already knew most things about it. It was more the internal components. But especially when you're switching from something like a gas engine to electric, it's like, understanding that range anxiety and how do you fix it and how do you do it and what is the winter tail and, all these things. It was a lot. And I found most salespeople that were selling the cars had no idea about the electric cars. Like they weren't learning about the product they sell. And to me, if I'm buying something from somebody, they got to know 10 times more than what I know.
Yeah. They need to be at least able to leverage that information to you almost instantly, right? Like,
yes.
If they seem clueless, then you just lose all respect, right?
Yes, 1,000%. I agree with that.
Yeah, because there may be a time where you want them to bring in the technical expert on something because you don't expect them to know, right? Yeah.
Yep.
But he needs to know the top 5 things to engage you, then the next 5 into to a certain degree and lower, and then at a certain point you bring in other experts, and you appreciate that because you want to network with those people as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like selling anything, right? If you go with, and even go with your power of 3 in this same chapter, know the top 3 things your product or solution solves,
right?
And lead with that, right? Because that's the way I see it when you were talking about, hope you're doing good. We've been able to XYZ for these people here, and we'd like to show you if you got 10 minutes. So, whether that's saving money, from a CRM perspective, it's increasing your salesperson's ability to sell instead of messing around with a clunky, bulky CRM. It's never losing leads. It's allowing to automate and speed up the process of sales. And a lot of these things, the learning curve that people have with CRMs, and how do you flatten that learning curve? And, all of these things become the catalyst of what that first conversation with, and I know you're more of a phone person. I personally, and I'd love to chat quickly about this. I know you got to get moving, and so do I, but I'm more of an email person.
Right.
I enjoy email mainly because I'm emailing majority of CEOs, and I've never made a phone call to a CEO that's caught them at a good time. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's like I hit CEOs or upper level VC level management and say, hey, listen, here's the situation. This is what it solves. Are you interested in scheduling something in your calendar? Like, I'm not trying to sell anything except a 10 or 20 minute conversation with us, right? With me. And I often say 3 to 4 minutes on your calendar, because anytime I say 10 minutes, somebody assumes it's 30 minutes.
Right.
Right. It's just the way
Yeah.
we're programmed. So,
Yeah.
and I know, and maybe on the next one, because
Yeah, and I do dive into
I-
some of that in the book, and
Yes, you do.
and I,
Yeah.
I have like there's multiple ways I got to get a hold of them, and it's not always the phone, right? So email's definitely a huge part of it, and there's a lot on email etiquette as well, right? And so that'd be great to come back and chat on that.
I would love that, especially because when you're in chapter 5, when you talk about, you only get forever to make another impression. And I love that. I love that because everybody goes, oh, well, no, you only got one chance to make a first impression. It's like, well, you kind of, so there's a couple of things that really stick out is also hear me now, believe me later.
Right.
Like that for salespeople, that's huge. And just this chapter alone.
Yeah.
I love the way you started with Hans and Franz because he's going to bump you up. I love that. But so there's a lot of parts, and I mean, all I did was pick 4 things from the first 6 chapters that I think were big. Right? We touched WSP, we touched greed-based learning. So I'd love to have you back to discuss more.
Anytime.
So we'll schedule a time that works for you to come back live and discuss the rest of that. But for all of you watching and listening, again, it's Glenn Poulos' book, Do Not Sit in the Lobby, Never Sit in the Lobby, the 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow Business and Build a Sales Career. Really, really good book. New age sales book, for all of you that are still, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the old guys are still classics, right? But a new age sales book to talk about how we're going today. I mean, you bring up a lot of relevant stuff that's happening in today's market, which I think is great. Great.
Right on. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for being here, Glenn. How can people get a hold of you? How can people
just go to my website, glennpoulos.com, or if they want to talk to me on LinkedIn, it's probably the fastest way. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can talk to me there, or you can contact me via the website, and you can link to the book or any of my other social media. And pretty active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So happy to talk to anybody that wants to go over anything or talk about sales or business. And we didn't get a chance to talk about me exiting 2 businesses. I had 2 8-figure exits in my career. So there's lots to talk about on our next call.
Yeah, tons, and we'll schedule an hour for that show.
Yeah,
and really dig deep. That sounds awesome.
All right.
Glenn, thanks for being here, my friend. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll see you tomorrow with Data Day Wednesday.